Today, we're going to dive into the work of computer scientist Newport. We're going to build a framework for getting our focus back, especially in a world that feels like it's specifically designed to take it away.
All right, so let me just start with a question for you. Do you ever feel like you're just constantly working? Your day is just this blur of activity, but when you get to the end of it, you feel like you've accomplished, well, not a whole lot of anything that really matters. If that sounds familiar, you're in good company.
You know, that feeling actually has a name. It's what Newport calls the pseudo-productivity trap. And honestly, it's the core problem so many of us are facing in our work lives today.
So what is it exactly? Well, pseudo-productivity is basically when we confuse being busy with being effective. It's all the emails, right? The back-to-back meetings, the endless Slack pings. These are all very visible signs that we're doing something, but they're not necessarily signs we're making any real progress.
And this table just perfectly shows how we get so stuck in this loop. Because a lot of our work today is hard to measure, we fall back on that visible activity to prove we're actually working. And the tools we use, email, Slack, you name it, they make it incredibly easy to show off this busyness all the time. So what's the end result? We spend our entire day jumping from task to task in a state Newport calls cognitive disorder, and it just completely leads to burnout.
So the big question is, how do we break out of this cycle? Well, the answer is to embrace the total opposite of all that chaotic busyness, and that is the power of deep work.
Newport makes this really sharp distinction between two kinds of work. You've got shallow work, that's all the logistical stuff, like answering emails or setting up meetings. You can pretty much do it while you're distracted and it doesn't create a lot of new value. But then you have deep work. This is the stuff that's mentally demanding. It needs intense, unbroken focus. It pushes your skills to the limit, and it's how you create things that have real, lasting value.
Now, here's what I find so interesting about how Newport talks about this. He literally calls deep work his superpower. He's not working crazy long hours, but because he protects his focus, a huge amount of high-quality stuff just gets done. It's a massive strategic advantage.
Okay, so how do we get this superpower for ourselves? Well, the very first step is to become an architect of your own focus, and that starts with your physical environment.
Newport lays out 3 really practical steps. First, you dedicate a specific space just for deep work. For him, it's a library with no tech in it. Second, you have to be ruthless about removing distractions. I mean, when he's writing, his phone is not even in the same room. And third, and this is a cool one, you use serious tools.
What does he even mean by serious tools? Well, think about it like this. When you pick up a high-quality, $70 lab notebook, or you stand in front of a giant whiteboard, it sends a message to your brain. It says, okay, what I'm about to do right now is important. It just naturally encourages a more formal, more focused, and more rigorous way of thinking.
Newport uses this fantastic analogy from his time at MIT. For someone who thinks for a living, a whiteboard isn't just a board. No, it's like a powerful instrument, a radio telescope that lets you see connections and ideas that would just be invisible otherwise. It's a tool for thinking at the absolute highest level.
So, once you've got your environment sorted out, the next step is all internal. It's about starting to treat your attention less like something you just have and more like a muscle that you need to actively train.
You know, most of us were taught to learn passively, highlighting a textbook or rereading our notes. But the most effective way to learn is a technique Newport talks about called active recall. Yeah, it's harder, it's definitely more mentally demanding, but it is brutally efficient for actually learning and remembering things.
So here's how you do it, in 4 simple steps. Step 1, you consume the information. Read the chapter, watch the lecture, whatever it is. Step 2, and this is the most important part, you step away from the material. Put it away. Then, step 3, try to replicate the main ideas completely from memory, like you're trying to teach them to someone else. And finally, step 4, go back, check what you missed, and then fill in the gaps.
And the results are they're not even close. Passive review, like highlighting, leads to really low retention. You just forget most of it. But active recall forces your brain to build and strengthen those neural pathways, which leads to incredibly high retention. It's really the difference between just being familiar with an idea and truly knowing it inside and out.
So, you've engineered your space, you started training your mind. The final piece of this whole puzzle is to create a totally new operating system for your day.
A lot of us live by our to-do lists, right? But a to-do list is basically just a wish list. It's a list of things you hope you get to. Newport says we should use time blocking instead. This is where you literally give every single minute of your workday a specific job. It forces you to be proactive and get real with the actual 24 hours you have.
And this leads to a really powerful idea Newport calls fixed scheduled productivity. It all starts with one simple, non-negotiable rule: a hard stop to the workday. For him, that's 5:30 p.m.
Now, this might sound restrictive, but this constraint is actually liberating. It forces you to be way more efficient and creative with the time you do have. It prevents burnout by setting a clear boundary. It protects your personal life. And, this is the most important part, it shifts your entire mindset away from hours worked and towards value produced.
And really, that's the core idea of all of this. Real productivity isn't about trying to cram more stuff into your day or working longer and longer hours. It's about architecting your focus, training your attention, and designing your time so you can do the right things deeply.
So I'll just leave you with this one question to really think about. After everything we've talked about, what is the one distraction, the single biggest one, that you can get rid of starting today to make some real space for deep, meaningful work in your life?